Welcome to 10 Minute Magic, a weekly format covering news in the world of Magic the Gathering in 10 minutes or less. I am Joseph Dunlap.
And I'm Ben Cotty, and this is what's been going on in Magic the Gathering this week. Gabby Spartz made an announcement earlier this week that she is going full-time. She is going to be streaming on Twitch nearly daily and will also be dedicating herself to MTG coverage. So this will be great news for everybody that's wanted a familiar female regular sort of cast member of the coverage team. But there was some eyebrows raised because Gabby's been working for the same company, media company called Dose, for the last 7 years. She sits on the board. So to step away from this, there are sort of a few people, some jokingly and some not, calling her slightly crazy. She has taken it as a sabbatical, so there's a cushion should things not pan out. But having a female dedicating to this really as sort of the most prominent is very exciting. I suppose the question is this sort of a reckless move on her part, or is it just really a sign of the gaming opportunity that's worth grasping at this time? It's a new dawn, I think, just a vindication of the way the games are moving based on the conversation we had last week.
Yeah, very much like the conversation we had last week. And speaking of last weekend, there was an interesting incident that was recounted on Reddit that occurred during last weekend's mocks. And there was a lot of bugging out, a lot of bugs going on in the matches. And this match in particular bugged completely out in response to a graveyard interaction. The match restarted and both players' timers reset to 25 minutes each. It's a known bug in Magic the Gathering Online, not that they've ever fixed it, but it's been recorded on Twitch streams in the past. Following this match reset, hand mulligans were buggy, and an English one became invisible, and Empty the Warrens cast with a storm count of 2 yielded only 3 tokens instead of 6. That invisible endless one was unblockable since he couldn't choose it as a block target. He was able to select Serum Visions in the graveyard as a block target, so out of curiosity, he decided he would block the Serum Visions with a Goblin token, hoping maybe that was Endless One, and sure enough, the phrase Goblin token blocks Serum Visions appeared in the game log. The Reddit user followed up by saying, "At least I made it through 9 rounds of the mocks without facing a Mir Superion," which, if you recall from last week's episode, is currently bugged on Magic Online.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the more stranger ones to come out recently, but it's kind of more evidence that Magic the Gathering Online will kind of struggle to recreate the turbulence of playing things like Storm in the Magic in digital? Or is it just one of those to add to the lists of people pointing out saying this is the underinvestment and attention that the program's not getting and sorely needs? Another thing that kind of comes out of this, I suppose, on Magic Online, you can't really get a draw. And this was an article posted by Brian Brundoon this week, which kind of was a follow-up to the articles from Eric Froelich and what amounted to a rebuttal of sorts from Ross Merriam on Star City Select. BBD proposed the solution to all of these problems, which is to make the draws completely worthless. A summary from the end of BBD's article is removing the value from draws wouldn't create a perfect system. It would create a system where players play more matches of Magic, play those matches faster, and play to win those matches. Instead of navigating tiebreaker math, players can just stick to navigating their matches of Magic instead. That's the kind of change that should be drawn up. Ignoring the pun at the end there, it's one of those solutions that is extremely impressive on paper, and kind of you think to yourself, well, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. But as many of the commenters on this have made across Twitter and on the article itself, it's got its sort of pitfalls and problems. I suppose it's a question of weighing the balance against the positives. But a lot of the comments I saw seem to be coming from habit. You know, this is just the way things have always been. Why would we want to change it? And I don't think that's healthy. I think the healthy thing for the Magic community is shooting for improvement all the time.
This is one of those things, it's a hot topic right now. Give it some time. As time goes on, they'll care more about the banned and restricted list for the modern landscape. Ultimately, it may be a little bit too much to change at this point. A change like this would have to take a lot of time. If you recall, just trying to implement the Vancouver Mulligan was enough of a change that people had to get used to, so we'll see if that's something they change. But speaking of the banned and restricted list, Aaron Forsyth sent out a tweet just today that hinted at the upcoming banned and restricted list update. The tweet said, "I've had lots of inquiries about restricting cards in Modern instead of banning, probably from Tron players that run one eye. Not our plan." Apparently, there has been a lot of questions about whether this would be an alternative to outright banning a problem card, but his wording is interesting here. Probably from Tron players that run one eye, which makes sense. If you're a Tron player, it's in your best interest to not want an Eye of Ugin ban. But for Aaron Forsyth to talk specifically about Eye of Ugin makes us wonder if maybe that's the direction they're headed for the upcoming bans. The general reception of the tweet has been, please unban something else, perhaps a blue control card that costs 4 mana. Jace. Many players are asking with the copious amounts of Modern bans in recent years that cards be allowed to leave the bench and come back into Modern. Occasionally this has happened, the most notable unbanned card recently being Wild Nakata leading to Zoo.
Yeah, and kind of linked to this is the discussion around Workshop potentially being banned in Vintage, restricted, which is the option they often use in Vintage to keep all of the cards available, but limiting you to only one copy. And there was a follow-up from Aaron basically saying, it's difficult to keep your eye on a restricted list and a banned list within one format, which is one of the reasons why they're not doing it in Modern.
It's also a matter of who draws the card first and that kind of thing.
Yes. Which doesn't matter so much in Vintage because you can demonic tutor for things. A strange one came up this week. 2016, Magic's on the move, esports are on the move, but coverage has been cut. This has sort of bounced around the different avenues. There was the recent shotgun coverage attempt for the Sunday Super Series, which ultimately didn't work, but off the back of that, there has now been a Kickstarter launch to provide coverage for GP Minneapolis at the end of May. So on the weekend of the 27th, 29th of May, there are actually 2 Magic the Gathering GPs happening, one in the UK here in Manchester, which I'll be attending, and in Minneapolis in the US. Under the 2016 coverage schedule, neither of them are to be streamed. However, GGS Live, which is the platform and the organisation that Rashad Miller runs that helps to stream the Magic coverage we normally see from the Pro Tours and GPs, have started a Kickstarter to fund coverage for this event. They're looking for $20,000. It'll be the normal commentary team we normally see. The first question they have to answer in the Kickstarter is, why are you doing a Kickstarter and this isn't been funded by Wizards? Which is generally the question everybody has been asking. It seems nonsensical in some ways to cut coverage when there's the explosion in esports we're seeing from all of these others. Some of the events like we saw with the escape rooms at previous GP is maybe where some of the money is being invested, but it just feels strange to everybody who wants to tune on a weekend to see a GP and they can't. It seems just the odd direction to go in this day and age.
Speaking of tournaments, Zach Elsick, friend of Draw4 Podcast, who appeared on this weekend's episode, snagged a win at the 250-man Hunter Burton Memorial Tournament in Dallas with Grixis Control, same list he ran at Grand Prix Paris. According to Zach, the payout was $1,200, a sweet watch, and an invite to the next SCG Invitational, so congratulations to Zach on a strong finish.
Go Zach. So that covers it for the news this week. And as we go on to look at some of the top articles from Manaleak this week and your comments to them, we come across the top 8 best Shadows over Innistrad cards you need to pick up at your pre-release by Matt Gregory. This is obviously focusing for the players going off to the pre-releases and cards you want to pick up for the upcoming standard format. The new Dual Lands are on there, Avacyn. Number 1 was Arlen Cord, our new favourite werewolf planeswalker, who everybody's calling out as a potential powerhouse as long as green-red is a playable combination. But the comments, there are a couple along the same lines. There was Glenn Angel, who said someone needs to write a top common/uncommon to play post. And Alex Curley with cool breakdown. I wish you took the time to go through commons and uncommons as picks instead for better strategy. And this isn't a knock against Matt, but consistently across the sort of different platforms, everybody has been focused on these big splashy rares and mythics. And I think maybe with the full spoiler out and looking at things, this is just how Magic is these days. If you want to compete at the highest level on the PPTQ circuits, it's the rares and mythics that you need to look at because they are set to dominate the archetypes in the standard landscape. I suppose the question is, for people playing, say, at an F&M level, is the black-red vampires build going to be enough of a power level for those on a budget?
There was a comment on last week's 10-Minute Magic from Jake Copestake. He gave us a ringing review and said he thought this was brilliant and an excellent addition in the UK Magic scene. So thank you very much, Jack. We appreciate the positive feedback and we will continue delivering.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jack, for that. And running off of that, our last article we want to look at this week was How to Teach Magic the Gathering to New Players in 7 Simple Steps by Adrian Thung. this is something I've had to struggle with, because when you've been playing for 20 years, trying to narrow down how you actually teach somebody who's completely new to the game can feel a little alien. The steps in here feel obvious once you've read them, but really are the nuts and bolts on how to introduce new players to this game, which is what we need to really keep the game going for another generation. Weird for me to say that now, being an older generation, I guess. Nick Massetti commented, I found that when making decks for new players, try and go with a tribal type theme. I taught a friend of mine how to play, and most of our games revolved around elves and vampires. They obey the rules of having plenty of creatures in your deck, but they add the interaction of lords and the sort of growth of cards all working together. What made it more fun, it was exceptionally fair, more or less 50-50. That made him want to play over and over, as the games were literally always a turn away from one or other winning. I think this has definitely shown us that the fantasy tropes are a great way of pulling new players into Magic. I think any of these players experiencing through these type of tropes is a great idea of giving them a side to root for and an investment in what the different colours of Magic can really do.
Well, that is it for 10-Minute Magic. Thanks again for joining me, Ben. It's always great talking about the news with you.
And with you, Joseph. And as always, if you feel along the lines of Jack, or you have a comment to help us produce even better content for you, please do feed it back. We'd love to hear from you in the comments section and across Twitter. I'm at Carburita on Twitter.
I am Joseph_Dunlap, and this has been 10-Minute Magic. We'll see you guys later.
Bye-bye.